There's a chilling moment that occurs when a narcissist realizes that all their psychological tactics have failed, when every manipulation strategy has been neutralized by your growing awareness, when every emotional weapon in their arsenal has been rendered powerless by your newfound strength and clarity. It's in this moment of complete tactical failure that they don't simply give up or walk away. Instead, they reach for their most sophisticated psychological weapon, one so subtle, so perfectly calculated, so devastatingly effective that it can recapture even the strongest survivors who thought they had finally escaped. This isn't just another manipulation attempt. This is what Carl Jung would recognize as the ultimate expression of the narcissist's relationship to power, control, and psychological dominance. A final game so insidious that it uses your own growth, your own healing, your own strength as the very mechanism of your re-entrapment. If you've experienced that moment when you thought you were finally free, only to find yourself mysteriously drawn back into the narcissist's orbit through what seemed like their genuine transformation or authentic growth, if you've wondered how someone who appeared to be finally changing could still be playing psychological games at the deepest level, then you need to understand what I call the transformation mirage, the narcissist's final and most sophisticated attempt to regain control by becoming everything you've always hoped they could be. Hit that like button if you're ready to explore this most treacherous territory of narcissistic manipulation, and subscribe with notifications on, because we're about to examine the psychological game so subtle that recognizing it could be the difference between genuine freedom and a more sophisticated form of psychological captivity. The transformation mirage represents the narcissist's ultimate evolution in psychological warfare. Jung understood that when direct approaches fail, the psyche often resorts to what he called inverse manipulation, achieving control not through obvious force, but through the appearance of surrender, not through domination, but through apparent submission to the very qualities that represent freedom from their influence. The narcissist has observed your growth, studied your healing journey, and learned exactly what kind of person you would need them to become for you to consider returning to the relationship. But here's the devastating truth. They're not becoming that person. They're performing that person with such psychological sophistication that the performance becomes indistinguishable from reality, even to trained observers, even to mental health professionals, and most dangerously, even to you. This isn't simple acting or conscious deception. This is what Jung would call shadow possession by the idealized self. The narcissist temporarily inhabiting the very qualities they've spent years rejecting, but inhabiting them only as a means to an end, not as authentic transformation. The first manifestation of this final game is what I call therapeutic language mastery with emotional authenticity mimicry. The narcissist suddenly becomes fluent in the language of psychology, therapy, and personal growth. They speak about emotional regulation, healthy boundaries, childhood trauma, and the importance of authentic communication with impressive sophistication and apparent genuine understanding. They acknowledge their past behavior with what seems like authentic remorse, and demonstrate insights into their psychological patterns that appear to represent genuine self-awareness. But Jung would recognize this as intellectual integration without emotional transformation. The narcissist has learned to speak the language of healing without actually engaging in the inner work that creates genuine change. They've studied your therapy process, absorbed the concepts that you've found meaningful, and learned to reproduce these insights with convincing emotional coloring. They can discuss their own narcissistic patterns with apparent insight, acknowledge their manipulation tactics with seeming regret, and express commitment to change with what appears to be authentic vulnerability. What makes this therapeutic language mastery so devastating is its precision. This isn't generic self-help language. This is specifically calibrated to address the exact issues that have been most important in your healing journey. If you've worked on boundaries, they suddenly understand boundaries. If you've explored childhood trauma, they suddenly recognize their own trauma patterns. If you've learned about healthy communication, they suddenly communicate with remarkable clarity and emotional intelligence. The second aspect of the transformation mirage is what I call behavioral pattern reversal with strategic authenticity. The narcissist doesn't just talk about change. They demonstrate it through consistent behavioral modifications that directly address their most problematic patterns. If they were controlling, they become remarkably respectful of your autonomy. If they were emotionally volatile, they display impressive emotional regulation. If they were manipulative, they communicate with apparent directness and honesty. Jung would understand this as conscious behavioral modification without unconscious transformation. The narcissist can control their external behavior with remarkable discipline when the stakes are high enough. But the underlying psychological drivers remain unchanged. They're not acting from genuine emotional regulation. They're acting from supreme motivation to regain control. Their new behaviors aren't expressions of authentic growth. They're sophisticated manipulation tactics disguised as personal development. This behavioral pattern reversal is particularly convincing because it demonstrates exactly the changes you've been hoping to see, often for years. The person who never apologized suddenly offers detailed, thoughtful apologies. The person who never showed empathy suddenly demonstrates remarkable sensitivity to your feelings. The person who never took responsibility suddenly owns their mistakes with apparent humility and commitment to doing better. The third manifestation of this final game is what I call vulnerability weaponization through strategic transparency. Rather than hiding their psychological processes, the narcissist begins sharing their inner world with unprecedented openness. They discuss their fears, their insecurities, their shame, their struggles with impressive honesty and apparent courage. They invite you into their healing journey, ask for your support in their growth process, and position you as their most trusted confidant in their transformation. But Jung would recognize this as calculated transparency for psychological bonding. The narcissist is sharing their inner world not for authentic intimacy, but as a strategic tool for re-engagement. Their vulnerability is performed rather than felt. Their transparency is selective rather than complete. And their openness is designed to create the illusion of mutual healing while actually serving their agenda of psychological recapture. This vulnerability weaponization is devastatingly effective because it gives you exactly what you've been longing for: access to their authentic inner world, evidence of their capacity for genuine feeling, proof that they're capable of the emotional intimacy you've always believed was possible between you. You feel like you're finally seeing the real person underneath the manipulative facade, finally accessing the vulnerable core that their defenses have protected for so long. The fourth aspect of the transformation mirage is what I call future vision co-creation with authentic commitment performance. The narcissist doesn't just promise a better future, they invite you to participate in designing it with them. They engage with your dreams, your goals, your vision for what a healthy relationship could look like, with enthusiasm that seems genuine and commitment that appears authentic. They acknowledge the specific changes that would need to occur for the relationship to work and express willingness to do whatever inner work is necessary to create that reality. Jung would understand this as archetypal manipulation of the creative function, using your natural drive to create meaning and build a meaningful future as raw material for their final manipulation attempt. The narcissist understands that hope is the most powerful psychological force, and they're weaponizing your hope by giving you evidence that your vision of a transformed relationship might actually be possible. This future vision co-creation is particularly insidious because it requires your active participation in imagining and planning the very future that the narcissist has no intention of honoring. You become invested not just in their apparent transformation, but in the shared vision you've created together, making it exponentially harder to recognize when their performance begins to slip or their true patterns begin to re-emerge. The fifth manifestation of this final game is what I call relationship archaeology with authentic regret performance. The narcissist suddenly becomes interested in examining the entire history of your relationship with apparent objectivity and genuine remorse. They acknowledge specific incidents of harmful behavior, express authentic seeming regret for the pain they've caused, and demonstrate understanding of how their actions affected you emotionally and psychologically. But Jung would recognize this as selective memory reconstruction for credibility building. The narcissist is carefully choosing which incidents to acknowledge and how to frame them in ways that support their current narrative of transformation without undermining their fundamental self-image. They're not engaging in genuine accountability. They're performing accountability as a means of establishing credibility for their transformation claims. This relationship archaeology creates the powerful illusion that they're finally seeing and understanding the full impact of their behavior. They might reference specific conversations, acknowledge particular patterns, and express regret for choices that hurt you in ways they never seemed to understand before. This apparent insight feels like validation of your experience and evidence of their genuine psychological growth. The sixth aspect of the transformation mirage is what I call external validation orchestration through character witness deployment. The narcissist doesn't just claim to have changed, they provide evidence through carefully selected third parties who can vouch for their transformation. These might be therapists who've worked with them, friends who've observed their growth, family members who've noticed their improved behavior, or colleagues who've seen their enhanced emotional intelligence. Jung would understand this as credibility building through managed perception creation. The narcissist understands that your skepticism is healthy and warranted, so they provide external validation from sources you're likely to trust or respect. These character witnesses aren't necessarily lying. They may genuinely believe they've observed authentic change because the narcissist's performance has been so convincing and sustained. This external validation is particularly effective because it addresses your reasonable doubt about their transformation. When multiple people independently confirm that they've observed significant positive changes in the narcissist's behavior and emotional functioning, it becomes much harder to maintain skepticism about the authenticity of their growth. The seventh manifestation of this final game is what I call sacrifice demonstration through strategic self-limitation. To prove their commitment to change and their respect for your needs, the narcissist begins making what appear to be genuine sacrifices. They might give up behaviors, relationships, or activities that have been important to them. They might accept limitations on their freedom, submit to increased accountability, or agree to conditions that seem to genuinely constrain their ability to engage in manipulative behavior. But Jung would recognize this as temporary limitation acceptance for long-term control maintenance. The narcissist is willing to accept short-term constraints on their behavior if these constraints convince you to re-engage with the relationship. Their sacrifices aren't expressions of genuine respect for your needs. They're investments in regaining access to the psychological supply and control they've lost through your absence. These sacrifice demonstrations are convincing because they represent exactly the kind of behavioral accountability you've always believed would be necessary for the relationship to work. When someone appears willing to give up significant freedoms or accept meaningful limitations to prove their commitment to change, it creates powerful evidence that their transformation might be genuine. The eighth and perhaps most sophisticated aspect of the transformation mirage is what I call meta-awareness performance with manipulation acknowledgment. In their most advanced form, the narcissist actually acknowledges their own manipulative tendencies and discusses their awareness of their psychological patterns with apparent insight and commitment to consciousness. They might even acknowledge that their current behavior could be seen as manipulation and invite you to monitor them for signs of their old patterns. Jung would recognize this as conscious manipulation disguised as meta-consciousness, the ultimate sophistication in psychological manipulation, where the manipulator acknowledges the possibility of manipulation as a way of appearing to transcend it. By demonstrating awareness of their own manipulative capacity, they create the illusion that they've moved beyond it through consciousness rather than simply refined it through increased sophistication. This meta-awareness performance is devastatingly effective because it seems to address the very foundation of narcissistic psychology, the lack of genuine self-awareness and the unconscious nature of their manipulative behavior. When someone appears to have developed conscious awareness of their own psychological patterns and demonstrates commitment to monitoring themselves for unconscious manipulation, it suggests a level of psychological development that seems incompatible with narcissistic manipulation. The reason this final psychological game is so dangerous is that it uses your own growth, healing, and wisdom against you. Every insight you've gained about healthy relationships becomes a template for their performance. Every boundary you've learned to set becomes a guideline for their apparent respect. Every need you've identified becomes a target for their strategic fulfillment. Your own psychological development becomes the roadmap for their most sophisticated manipulation attempt. Jung would understand this as the shadow's final attempt at possession through light mimicry. The narcissist temporarily inhabits the very qualities that represent freedom from their influence, but inhabits them only as a means of re-establishing the psychological dominance they've lost. They become everything you've wanted them to be, not through authentic transformation, but through supreme motivation to regain control. Understanding this final game doesn't mean becoming cynical about genuine change or closing your heart to authentic transformation. It means developing what Jung would call discernment between performance and authenticity, the ability to distinguish between behavioral change that springs from genuine inner work and behavioral change that serves manipulative purposes, no matter how sophisticated or convincing the performance might be. The path forward involves trusting not just what you observe, but how you feel in your body, not just what they say, but the quality of energy you experience in their presence, not just their apparent insights, but the consistency of their behavior over extended periods of time when they think you're not watching. Authentic transformation creates expansion, freedom, and increased connection to your own inner knowing. Performance-based change creates subtle contraction, vigilance, and disconnection from your intuitive wisdom. Share in the comments if you've experienced this final transformation mirage, and remember that recognizing sophisticated manipulation isn't evidence of your cynicism, it's evidence of your wisdom. Subscribe for more insights into protecting your psychological sovereignty while remaining open to genuine growth and authentic connection. Your discernment is not a barrier to love. It's the foundation of love that's worthy of your beautiful, strong, authentic heart.